Hey everyone, it's Vera here. I thought I would share with you my experience with a natural birth versus epidural birth. So this is just pros and cons of what I experienced. My first birth was induced actually, and it was with an epidural. And then my recent birth, it was natural, unmedicated, and everything like that. I just wanted to say it doesn't matter how you have your baby. This is just my experience. I'm not saying what is better, what you should decide. It's all really up to you what kind of birth you want, or sometimes you can't even control what kind of birth you get. No matter how you gave birth, how it happened, you are amazing, mama. Okay? So with my first baby, I planned to have an epidural. I was actually really scared of pain. So pretty much I told my midwives I want epidural. But it ended up being my water broke when I was like 39 weeks and a couple days. And there was different colors in the water. It wasn't clear. So it ended up being the baby pooped in me. So I had to go into the hospital and get induced because they said when this happens, you have to have the baby in 24 hours. I went in the hospital around like 9 or 10. I got into my gown, whatever, and they put me in IV right away. And so around midnight, it was kind of interesting. The midwife, you said, you know, I would recommend you getting your epidural now before we induce you. Like when you get induced, the contractions are not normal contractions. I mean, this is my first birth. I'm naive. I'm scared of pain. I just said, sure. I got the epidural. It was not scary at all. Just to let you know, I wasn't scared. And it was like, I don't know, kind of felt like there was like a tube going down my back. But I was calm because I was not in pain. I'm sure if you're in labor, maybe it would be hard to stand still because you just had to crouch. And pretty much the downfall was I was bedridden and I couldn't eat. And I didn't know that. So if I knew that, maybe I would have waited. I was 20 hours straight in the bed, couldn't move. I couldn't even move my legs. It was completely frozen. But I never pressed the button to make the medication stronger, so it actually was slowly fading away. The thing is about my experience with induction, my poor baby boy did not like the Pitocin. Every time they would put the drops in, his heart rate would go down. Because his heart rate was going down, there was a lot of pressure, like maybe you'll need a C-section, maybe something's happening. And I know when you have an epidural, you're more likely you could get pressure to have a C-section. So that also kind of is annoying. My midwives, they totally believed that I would have a C-section. I just said to the doctor, if I could have a vaginal birth, please let me. Overall, I was very alert and everything, but I was just very tired, hungry, and very uncomfortable with the IVs and everything. They couldn't find my veins, so I started bruising. The IV was really hurting me. They made me have a blood pressure around my arm all the time. So like every 30 minutes, it was squishing me. So it ends up being, after 30 minutes, I, gave birth. It was Luca. If you guys watch my videos, he's 3 years old now. I did tear, so I had to get stitches. I didn't feel anything because I was still frozen. The only thing I didn't like was they took him away right away. I didn't even get to see him. They like cleaned him up and then they finally brought him to me. But I was very alert and very happy. And when I gave birth to him, I actually said right away, oh my goodness, I only pushed for 30 minutes. And I was really proud that I was able to have a vaginal birth. I really didn't want a C-section, so I was so proud of that. And I didn't regret my decision at all to have epidural. I was really mad about the induction though. So unfortunately, I couldn't feel my legs for a while. Like it was 3 hours later and I still said I can't feel my feet. So they kind of waited until it was like midnight or 1 o'clock when the nurses finally said, okay, let's get up and get you to go to the bathroom. I got up and then 2 nurses helped me walk, so it was very unsteady. I started feeling my foot, but it kind of was like my foot was sleeping. So it was kind of weird to walk and I felt really sore and just kind of like woozy. They were saying I could feel dizzy, but I actually felt kind of okay. My whole recovery after epidural, it was okay, but I was very sore. I probably walked like a duck for 2 weeks, but I think it could be from stitches. I just remember when I go to the store, I couldn't walk normal. I was very sore down there, like waddling, like I was still pregnant. Definitely was like 6 weeks when I felt like better down there. But like I said, the first couple days was pretty rough. I was really slow and everything like that. Also, when I had the epidural, they made me stay for 2 more nights. So I actually felt really depressed in the hospital and very unhappy. I was really mad that I had to stay another night. And after the next day when I gave birth, they weren't really helping me. No one was around. No one really visited me. I was alone at night. So I was very miserable. And by the third day, I was in tears. And I don't know, for me, hospital feels like prison. So with my natural birth, I wanted to try to be natural, but I was very open to epidural because I wasn't sure how much pain I could take. I never felt natural labor. I've never felt birth naturally, so I wasn't sure how it's going to be. But when I mentioned the midwives, I want to try to be home as much as I could and then go to the hospital closer to when I have to give birth. They were very on it and they made sure that happened. What ended up being, if you want to hear my whole story of my natural birth, I'll put in the iCard, but you can listen to that whole story, so I don't want to tell everything. I had actually a natural birth. I pretty much came to the hospital and gave birth within 20 minutes. So it was very intense. I loved it that I was home. Most of the time it was very comfortable. I was able to walk around, be in my bed. So the first couple hours was okay. Once it was active labor, it was really hard to handle it. But I wouldn't really say it was really painful. For me, I had back labor only, and I would say it did not feel like period cramps. I know some people say it felt like period cramps. Not for me. For me, it literally felt like my body was opening and stretching. Like it felt like my spine was splitting open and like someone was like just breaking my bones. That's really how it felt like. And I wouldn't say that was like painful. It just felt like really intense, strong, powerful, like contractions. That's what it really felt like. It was just like someone was trying to stretch me open. That's what it felt like. I just wanted also to say, if you want to have a natural birth, you need to prepare yourself. I think if you don't prepare yourself and you don't do research and you don't figure out how to handle it, you will not be able to go through it. Because I did research, I was able to keep calm. They say if you stay calm, you breathe through the contractions, it will be less painful. But if you start panicking, you start screaming, it makes the contractions worse. So I would say the last 2 hours was the hardest. It was very hard to stay calm. And then once I was in the hospital and actually pushing, it actually felt better for me when I pushed the contraction. It was less painful. It didn't feel like my body was ripping apart. So the biggest thing I would say about natural birth is it's very intense. Like you are not aware of your surroundings. I pretty much had my eyes closed the whole time while I was ready to give birth. It's almost like an out-of-the-body experience, and you don't really aware of what noises you're making or what you're doing. But I will say, when you have a natural birth, after you give birth to him, you feel amazing. I remember right away, like all the pain disappeared. You felt this huge relief. I remember I had this huge sigh of relief. Put him right on my chest. He started crying right away on my chest. And I was just like, wow, I did this. And it was really nice too because they actually delayed the cord clamping. So he laid on my chest for over like an hour. And I got no stitches. So that's the biggest thing as well. After they cleaned him up and everything, pretty much they said to me, I can go home. So I got up totally feeling fine. Did not feel lightheaded or anything. Was able to go bathroom and got changed, and they're like, you can go home. So I was literally in the hospital only for 3 hours, and we were going home that day. I gave birth like 4:20 and we came home, it was like 8 o'clock. So that's amazing. So that's one thing I loved. I got to go home and just be comfortable at home in my bed. I rested at home. It was really peaceful and nice. And first 3 hours my son was sleeping, and after that he cried all the time. So I feel like that's one big difference, which I don't know, every baby's different and this is only my experience, but I feel like that's a big difference. When I had epidural birth, baby's very calm and quiet, and then when I had natural birth, baby was very alert and he was just crying and hungry and everything like that. And when people came to visit me the next day, I said to them, I don't want to give birth ever again. I don't want to go through this ever again. It was too crazy. It was too intense. Now it's been 6 months since I've given birth. You kind of forget about it. And you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't that bad. My son was really like colicky, crying a lot for the first 6 weeks. And those 6 weeks was very hard. I hardly had any sleep. And even now, still, there's nights where he wakes up every hour. And when I look back at it, I think, you know what? Giving birth is a lot easier than raising a child. So if you're ever scared of birth, like I was so scared of birth, like even with my first child when I had epidural, I was so afraid of giving birth. I was so afraid of tearing, but honestly, it's just one day. Sometimes it can be 2 days if you're having really long contractions, but giving birth is only one day, and raising your child is 18 years or even more. And when you're raising a baby, the first year, it feels forever. You have sleepless nights, your baby's crying constantly, you are worrying all the time. So giving birth is not that scary with my both experiences. And if someone ever asks me, oh, what is better? What would you recommend? Should I try epidural or should I try natural? I can't give you a decision, and I won't tell you what to decide. I've listed my pros and cons of what I went through. I will say with an epidural, it is a lot more calmer and easier. You don't really feel anything, and the recovery is a little bit longer. Also forgot to mention that my feet were numb for like months, like randomly with tingling, especially when I was sitting. But with a natural birth, I was out of the house after 3 hours. I went home. I was totally fine walking. Yeah, that's the big difference. So if you kind of are okay with a very intense, crazy contractions, labor, which can be quick. Some people have really quick labor. If you are okay with that, or if you want something very simple, you don't want to feel any intense pain, you can take the epidural, but then the recovery is a little bit slower and harder. But I think in like a perfect world, if anything, if like I ever have another baby, it would be, maybe I would prefer 100% natural. Like when I look back at it, I want to go home right away. If that last hour, which is the most hardest, if there was such a kind of medication where they could like make it a little bit less intense, I would take that, you know? But I kind of like having that natural feeling of giving birth because I feel like I gave birth better when I felt it all. But yeah, if it was in a perfect world and you're able to have epidural for the last hour, do it. So yeah, it's a hard decision. Like I said, it all depends how many hours you're in labor. I think if I was in labor for 24 hours, super exhausted, like some people, they don't sleep for nights and nights. And it's very hard to give birth when you're exhausted. So totally recommend epidural. You need some rest and sleep. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful to someone who is pregnant right now and who is deciding which kind of birth they want, natural or epidural. Comment down below what kind of birth you had if you want to share your story. But I just wanted to say you are an amazing mama, and whatever way you give birth, that's amazing. We're all superwomen. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoy these mommy lifestyle videos, and hopefully I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.